Chair Brady, I don't think is on the line yet, but, oh, I see. Okay. Cody, I see test chat. Hopefully everyone can see Cody Case test chat down there because we're going to use that function today. All right. Let's see if I can now go back to participant stuff. Okay. All right. All right, I'm gonna start the hearing, and my colleagues will be coming in. You'll hear that I'm a little concerned because we have a number of witnesses. Here's Chair Brady. Welcome. I see your name. Do I see you? I guess we have a limited little Brady Bunch Hollywood Squares type thing here, but I see you're here. So welcome. And we're going.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
There you are. Thank you. We're going to collectively we're going to gavel in this hearing of the Joint Committee on Public Service. I appreciate everyone's time and attention to the matters before us today. Today we're going to take legislation. We're going to take testimony on legislation relative to insurance and investments. We have 42 bills before us for consideration, and we have more than 45 people signed up to testify. It also is a factor that at 1 o'clock today we have a constitutional convention that's been called, so that's why we're going to get right into the testimony. But I do want to tell you that the way that I expect the hearing to run is that out of respect for the many individuals who have signed up, we'll enforce the 3-minute time limit in our rules. That's 3 minutes per individual and 12 minutes maximum for panels. Staff will issue a 30-second warning in the chat, and I think you might have seen that just come up as a test, and we'll ask you to respect this time limit. We recognize it's everyone's right to provide testimony before the committee. However, we ask that you refrain from providing testimony that's duplicative of others who have spoken before you. The lead sponsor of many of the bills that we have to be heard today will be speaking, and so if the lead sponsor says essentially what you intend to say, or you agree with what the lead sponsor has testified to, it's perfectly appropriate just to tell us that. You can always supplement your testimony in writing. If you signed up prior to the deadline to appear here as a witness, which was Monday at 1 o'clock, we will get to you, and we will try to get to everyone. But again, keep in mind that if we don't, or if you have more testimony after the 3-minute limit, to submit a writing, and we'll keep the hearing open for written testimony for a week, which is to say until 5 o'clock on Wednesday, June 16th. You're here on the Teams online platform conducting this hearing, so I ask you to refrain from using the chat for substantive conversations because they're not recorded by live stream, and so therefore they're not able to be made part of the public record. And in order to allow everyone to be heard, I ask that you use the mute feature if you're not speaking. So with that out of the way, I'll introduce the House members of the committee who are here with us. And I'm going to just go over here to the participant page to see who that is because I can't see everybody. So right now, and they'll be coming in and out, we have Representative Lippert-Garabedian is here with us. And Representative Uyterhoeven is here with us, and I know some more will be coming through.
Mr.
Chair Brady? Yes. Did I miss somebody?
Mr. Chair, this is Dave DeCoste. I've had to call in, but I am participating as well.
Thank you for pointing that out. You're here as you're appearing as your phone number, so thank you for that. Chair Brady?
Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Chair. I don't see any senators that have signed in as of yet, but if any are here and I can't see them on the line, please be happy to introduce yourself.
Thank you. One last thing I want to tell you is if you see me looking at my cell phone, I'm not trying to be rude. It's just staff, committee staff telling me who's coming up next as a witness or something like that. Normally they sit next to us, to Chair Brady and I, and can tell us those things, but we're all operating remotely, so please don't misinterpret if you see me looking away, or even at my other screen where I'm looking for my outlines. If to the members of the committee, if you use your raise hand feature or send a chat to committee staff, then we'll know you have a question about particular testimony. With respect to legislators, our tradition is to take them out of turn, but what they've agreed to do because of the timing of this, because of the number of witnesses today and their time as well, is they've all signed up telling us what time they'll drop in. So they're not going to necessarily all come up first, as sometimes happens, but they'll be interspersed throughout the hearing. Okay, so our first witnesses to sign up are on H2573, and those witnesses are Jim Redmond, Joe Durant, and Bridget Quinn.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Brady, Joe, Bridget. I don't know how you want me to go first, or do you guys want to go? How do you want to?
You're appearing as a panel, so that's between you.
Okay, great. I'll jump right in then. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the committee. For the record, again, my name is Jim Redmond. I am here today to offer support for several initiatives before the committee related to the Group Insurance Commission. As the Commonwealth continues to emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, public sector unions across Massachusetts have joined in solidarity to support a series of bills designed to bring much-needed reforms to the Commonwealth's Group Insurance Commission. As Massachusetts commences the process of charting a course forward in the face of unprecedented economic and social changes and challenges, the reforms needed at the GIC have been laid bare like never before. 3 of the bills that we're supporting are before you today, and we respectfully request your consideration and support for favorable recommendations on the following legislation. House Bill 2573, filed by Rep. Capano. This bill would increase labor's voice on the Group Insurance Commission itself. Legislation would add 2 labor commissioners in seats that are currently held by members of the general public. The goal with this legislation is to increase labor's voice in matters related to their own health insurance. House 2573 would still maintain management's majority on the commission, but allow for a more collaborative approach rather than a lopsided rubber stamp. In addition, we're supporting House Bill 2587, which would set all premiums at 90-10 for state employees. Currently, there is a split depending on when you were hired. If you were hired prior to July 1, 2003, you pay 80-20. If you're hired since then, you pay 75-25. We think that this is an important investment and would bring much needed equity to the system. The final bill that I'd like to weigh in on this morning is 2710, House Bill 2710, filed by Representative David LaBeouf. This bill would allow newly hired employees to access their health care on day one. Currently, state employees have to wait 60 days before they can access their health insurance. I think coming out of a pandemic, we really don't need to say much about how important it is to have access to health care as quickly as possible, not just for the preservation of someone's personal health, but it really has become a public health and a public safety issue to ensure that people who are sick get access to the treatment they need as quickly as they can. So I'm going to stop there, Mr. Chairman, in honor of the time, and pass it off to my colleagues. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Joe Durant.
Mr. Chairman, we're in support of all those bills that Jim mentioned, and I have testimony with Representative Farley Bouvier at 11 o'clock, so I'll keep my remarks for that time.
Okay. And then next we have Bridget Quinn, Mass AFL-CIO.
Hi, Chair Gordon, Chair Brady, and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to testify today on 3 important pieces of legislation that my colleagues just mentioned, so I will be brief in the interest of time today. So each bill, each of the 3 bills really speaks to ensuring that public employees have a stronger and more equitable voice in determining their health insurance benefits. I think that, as we have seen the challenges in the last 16 months in the Commonwealth that we faced as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, which are still challenges that are ongoing, have really kind of shown in sort of, we really see what the issues are with making sure that folks have access to their health insurance benefits, and they have access to their health insurance benefits right away. So I would like to urge the committee to report out favorably House Bill 2573, which is an act relative to GIC composition and transparency, adding 2 additional labor seats to the current commission. So right now, only 5 of 17 GIC commissioners are public employees or representing public employee organizations. This adding 2 seats simply seeks to add a more equitable voice at the table, which we do definitely feel the time is now to do that. I would also like to record the AFL-CIO in favor of House 2710 that my colleague Jim Redmond just mentioned about making sure that when our state employees, our public employees, on their first day of work, they have access to health insurance. They should not have to wait 60 days to access health insurance. A lot, as we know, can happen in 60 days. And so we certainly don't want to have our state employees worrying about, a medical emergency coming up, or simply having to pay, out of pocket for a doctor's appointment for their child. And then the final one I wanted to register in favor of is House Bill 2641, an act relative to fair worker representation on joint purchasing committees. And so that's all I got for you today. Thank you for your time and attention, and I urge you to report all those bills out of your committee favorably. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I was already mistaken, as the 3 of you were not signed up as a panel yourselves, but you're all here to testify on bills including 2573. So that was a surprise to you. So with that, does anyone from the committee have any questions for Jim Redmond, Joe Durant, or Bridget Quinn? Chair Brady, do you have?
No, I'd just like to thank them all for their time and their testimony today.
Yeah, and I also like to thank you. You've done a lot of hard work on these bills, and the committee recognizes that, and we appreciate that. So thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next bill we're going to hear testimony on is 2640. It was filed by Representative Dylan Fernandez, who's going to be with us later on in the hearing. But the first witness to sign up was Patricia Nolan. Is Patricia Nolan here? Patricia Nolan, going once. Okay. Then the next witness we have is a panel. I think this one is a panel. Nina Kammermer, Reverend Dr. Michelle Walsh, Kathleen Flanagan, John Grossman.
We're speaking on H2640, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, I'm Nina Kammerer. First of all, greetings, Chair Brady, Chair Gordon, and members of the committee. I'm here on behalf of the Services Employee International Union, Local 509, as a member of our Climate and Environmental Justice Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in favor of H2640, an act authorizing independent retirement systems to divest from fossil fuel companies. The over 17,000 workers of SEIU 509 provide social and education services in both the public and private sectors in Massachusetts. At work, we serve the community as case managers, social workers, childcare providers, direct support workers, and university faculty. At home, we live in the community as neighbors, parents, and taxpayers. The vast majority of Local 509 members live here in Massachusetts. We all serve our Commonwealth's communities and people, and we all care about our common health now and in the future. We also work hard to contribute to our city and state retirement systems. Retirement and a livable future should be possible for all workers. However, the evidence grows clearer that unchecked climate change is robbing us of our future. H2640 would allow local independent retirement systems to choose to divest from the fossil fuel industry, the major driver of the climate crisis. That is a choice that any local retirement system and the people of that municipality should be able to make as a fundamental democratic right. This bill does not mandate divestment from fossil fuel interests. As befits our democratic system of government, it allows local retirement systems to choose to do so. Without that, local retirement systems and the folks who rely on them are forced to continue to support fossil fuel industries that contribute to global warming and the climate crisis. We can divest from fossil fuels without sacrificing the health of our retirement funds. An analysis performed by Mass Divest showed that had the city of Somerville been allowed to divest a portion of its pension funds from the fossil fuel industry as it had planned, it would have significantly increased its return on investment. The tide is turning. Fossil fuels are not the fuels of the future. More and more municipalities see this. For example, Climate Action reports that 4 major US cities, Los Angeles, New York, New Orleans, and Pittsburgh, have pledged to divest from fossil fuels. Which direction should Massachusetts take? Should we continue a forced path of investing in fossil fuels, or should we instead allow local pension funds to divest? Let's give Massachusetts municipalities the choice of whether or not to fund a sustainable and healthy future. This is a moral issue, not only for our planet, but also for our democracy. Please support H2640. One final point, an important one. Time is of the essence in addressing the climate crisis and its disproportionate burden on marginalized community. So please report H2640 out of your committee favorably and quickly, and work to ensure that it passes both houses in this legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to recognize that 3 other members of our group from the Climate Justice Committee, Kathie Flanagan, who's the chair, Michelle Walsh, who's a member, and John Grossman, who's also a member as a staff member of 509, are part of the panel, but we just decided that one statement would be enough.
Thank you very much. That is a wise use of your time. I appreciate it. And much of what you said certainly makes sense. And we'll certainly be looking into this.
Thank you.
Any questions from the committee? I want to point out that Representative Higgins, Vice Chair Higgins has joined us, and Representative Kushmerek is here, as well as Representative Whalen is here. Okay, anyone else? Chair Brady?
No, I'm all set. Thank you for your testimony, Nina.
Thank you very much. Our second panel to testify on this bill consists of Sarah Snow, Corey Alperson, Rosalie Anders, T. Stephen Jones, Rachel Wan, and Sue Stafford. And again, thank you, and keep in mind you have 12 minutes between you, however you distribute that. Do we have any of those witnesses? I'll just call one more time to speak up while I'm talking if you're here. Sarah Snow, Corey Alperson, Rosalie Anders, Stephen Jones, Rachel Wan, W-Y-O-N, Sue Stafford. Okay, I'll just move on to the witnesses, the individual witnesses signed up to testify. First is Joseph Gerson. Wait, hold on one second, Mr. Gerson. Before you come up, I think we do have a legislator that signed up to testify at 10:20. So I do, before I get to you, I want to call Rob Consalvo to testify. And then I'll call you, Joe. So, Rob, are you here? Representative Consalvo? Okay, then, Joe Gerson. Okay. Hearing no Joe Gerson, how about Cole Harrison?
Hello, Chair Gordon. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Good. So I am Cole Harrison, Executive Director of Massachusetts Peace Action. We are a peace advocacy organization with 1,200 dues-paying members throughout the Commonwealth and 17,000 supporters. I'm testifying for H2597 and S1703 on divesting state pension funds from nuclear weapons producers, filed by Rep. Connolly and Senator Eldridge. Our country was the first to build nuclear weapons and the first to use them in war. That was the only time they were ever used in an attack, and most people across the world now understand that nuclear weapons are just too dangerous to ever be used. They are as dangerous for the countries that possess them as for those that are threatened by them. 49% of Americans and 70% of Democrats in the United States think the U.S. should work with other countries to eliminate all nuclear weapons. 54 nations have ratified the UN's nuclear ban treaty, which went into force in January and makes all activities surrounding nuclear weapons illegal in those countries. Massachusetts political leaders such as Senator Ed Markey, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Rep. Jim McGovern, and Representative Ayanna Pressley have filed legislation calling for us to move away from nuclear weapons in our national security strategy. Massachusetts is a nuclear target. Submarine-launched missiles are designed at Draper Labs in Cambridge. Nuclear command and control systems are designed at Hanscom Air Force Base in Bedford, Lexington. Raytheon, headquartered in Waltham, is the contractor to build the new long-range standoff missile, a destabilizing new weapon rushed into production by the Trump administration. Any adversary would surely target these locations, among others, and few Commonwealth residents would escape a nuclear exchange. Massachusetts state retirees do not need to invest in producers of weapons to fund their retirements. Those weapons endanger them and their children and grandchildren. They can receive safe and comfortable investment returns on their pension by allocating their investments to socially constructive products instead of building nuclear weapons. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Peter Metz. Peter Metz. Okay. Annika Lof, L-O-F.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. As a young person, I feel like the nuclear issue is especially concerning to me because basically for my entire life, the world has had enough nuclear weapons to destroy itself potentially several times over, and it's an issue that needs to be addressed now because nuclear weapons have been around for so long, and any conflict could really set off a global nuclear war and end humanity. And a lot of people have lived with this knowledge for their entire lives, and I feel that it's important to pass this bill and take some important early steps to limit the, just like send a message and begin to work to end nuclear weapons and this threat against humanity, because especially the younger generations have been kind of saddled with this burden of having these weapons that we haven't created, but we're the ones that have to get rid of them and make sure that there's no threat of nuclear war. And I believe it's important to pass this legislation and to begin to work against nuclear weapons and to begin to create a safer world where people don't have to be scared that any person really in power could destroy all of humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your testimony. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. My staff informs me there may have been something a little out of order from the online, from what we have in our committee list. So, but we will get to everyone. And we're hearing testimony not only on 2597, but this is also 1703. The language is the same. Okay, so next is Jonathan King. Next witness, Jonathan King. Signed up?
Jonathan has a medical appointment. He will be coming later.
Okay. Nicholas Cantrell. Next witness.
Nick is here. I don't know why we can't hear him. He's
Okay.
on the list of people.
Are you here, Nicholas Cantrell? Why don't I call you back? I see you're on the list. You're muted. I mean, I see you're here as a participant. I'm gonna just be, in the interest of time, I'll call you next. We'll go to Kathie Malley-Morrison.
I'm here.
You're here. Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, my name is Kathie Malley-Morrison. I'm from Westwood, Massachusetts. I'm a retired professor of psychology from Boston University, and I'm here to testify in favor of H 2597 and S 1703. My research at BU focused on the propaganda used by military industrial complex profiteers to entice or coerce or frighten ordinary people, including congressional representatives, into participating in immoral behaviors such as warfare. You're here today because you were elected to represent the interests of people living in Massachusetts. There's no better way to protect those interests than to become morally engaged in the fight against nuclear weapon development. For you specifically today, that means divesting from nuclear weapons when funding pensions. The UN Treaty prohibiting nuclear weapon development and sales takes an explicitly moral, humanitarian, human rights perspective that deserves respect and compels us to reject profits from selling nuclear weapons as a source of income for Massachusetts residents. Fortunately, the Commonwealth has already established a precedent for divesting from products that injure and kill people. For example, borrowing contributions to pension funds from companies producing tobacco products. While tobacco use has clearly sickened and killed millions of people, it's not as great a threat to life on Earth as making nuclear weapons, let alone exploding nuclear weapons by accident or design. Think of this: if you divest from corporations involved in making or maintaining nuclear weapons, you will be helping to save all of us and our living planet. Your votes on these bills will be evidence of the extent to which you are morally engaged or not engaged in activities that will preserve life on Earth. All of the world's major religions endorse the Golden Rule. It's probably the best set of moral guidelines ever developed. Apply it here. I'm not naive about the difficulty of following such moral guidelines in the face of multiple arguments trying to convince you that doing harm is good. So please don't let yourself be naive about the risk of not doing so in regard to nuclear weapons. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Okay. With that, I see Senator Eldridge has joined the hearing, and Senator, we're talking about your bill, your Senate bill. And so what, if you're ready, why don't you go ahead and provide your testimony now?
Great. Thank you so much, Chairman Gordon, Chairman Brady, and the members of the Joint Committee on Public Service. I want to thank those members of Mass Peace Action and other peace activists for their testimony just now. I had a chance to listen to the testimony. And I am here on my bill that I filed with Representative Mike Connolly for the Senate side at Senate 1703, an act relative to the divestment of state pension funds from nuclear weapons. And this bill, obviously, it's about using state pension funds, not using state pension funds to finance the research, development, and manufacture of nuclear weapons. There are 18 primary corporations involved in nuclear weapons development in Massachusetts. And I really see these divestment campaigns as one cog in the international effort to ban nuclear weapons development, stockpiling, and use by all nations of the world. And I'm encouraged by some of the steps of the Biden administration to do that. But again, I do feel like there's an opportunity at the state level to divest from these investments in our state pension system. I want to highlight that in 2016, the Cambridge City Council unanimously passed a resolution to divest city-managed pension funds from nuclear weapons manufacturers. And this led to a divestment primarily from Lockheed Martin and their portfolio. So there is local action happening in Massachusetts. This statewide bill has three primary benefits. First, it educates the general public about the role of weapons manufacturers in the continuing production of nuclear weapons. Second, it reduces the profitability of nuclear weapons manufacture by reducing public investment. And third, it sends a message to the U.S. Congress and our congressional delegation that we need to sharply reduce investment in nuclear weapons. And I don't have to tell anyone here, this is a part of a long history, a proud history in Massachusetts divestment campaigns, going back to de-investing from investments in tobacco products, obviously the anti-apartheid movement against South Africa in the 1970s and 80s. So divestment campaigns work. I think this is something, we need to take a look at. Appreciate the chairs taking me out of turn to testify. Again, thank you to the peace activists and Mass Peace Action for their testimony. And just make the point that our state pension is public money. It can reflect our values. And I urge the committee respectfully to report this important bill to the committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for your leadership on this issue. Are there any questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to thank the senator for his filing of this legislation and his testimony today as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Uyterhoeven, I think you would like to testify about this bill as well, and perhaps on some others.
Thank you, Chair Gordon, Chair Brady, Vice Chairs Higgins and Feingold, and to my fellow members of the committee. I'm here to join Senator Eldridge, Mass Peace Action, and peace activists across the globe to testify in support of the House Bill 2597. In a time of public health crisis and economic stress for millions of Americans, we continue to invest heavily in nuclear weapons. Pre-COVID, it was estimated that worldwide $740 billion was invested in nuclear weapons, and despite the dire need for investing in public health, scientific research, and global vaccine distribution, instead, estimates for investing in nuclear weapons have continued to climb in the past 18 months, with the United States leading in nuclear weapons spending. These weapons, no matter the rationale for use, will always harm communities and kill innocent civilians. As a second-generation Japanese immigrant, I know the generational harm and trauma of these weapons personally. I've had the opportunity to visit Hiroshima's Peace Memorial and the Genbaku Dome, and there I listened to the stories of survivors. I got to walk through their lived experience and what survivors have called living hell on earth. The loud bang, bright flash, sweltering heat, strong pervasive stench of burning flesh, followed by black rain, and watching one by one their classmates, friends, colleagues collapse while begging for more water. Visiting Hiroshima was not only a stark and powerful symbol of the most destructive force ever created by humankind, it also expresses the hope for world peace and the ultimate elimination of all nuclear weapons. We understand that continually investing in weapons does not protect us. International relations have never been solved with nuclear warfare. History may falsely glorify our warfare against other nations, but the outcome of nuclear wars are clear. Unthinkable numbers of lives lost and irreversible harm. We must divest from warfare and fully invest in peacekeeping efforts. So I want to leave you all with the words of Sunao Tsuboi, a survivor who at the time was a 20-year-old university student at the time of the bomb. He states, "On behalf of all A-bomb victims, I ask you to do everything in your power to rid the world of nuclear weapons. I will continue to repeat that demand until my last breath." And I am honored to stand here today with you all to uplift their voice and our shared commitment to peace. So let's lead the way and as a state pass this House Bill 2597. And I want to thank you all so much for your leadership and your commitment to the world that we believe in. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative, for your very moving testimony. I appreciate it. Chair Brady, did you have any questions or comments?
No, I'd just like to thank the representative as well for her testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Committee members? To Senator Eldridge and Representative Uyterhoeven, you're both on the committee. So if we were live, I wouldn't ask you to go back and forth to your seat on the committee and then testify again. So do you want to, if you have testimony on other bills, do you want to just offer that now and then go back to your role as a committee member? Either one of you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no other bills to testify on, but thank you for asking. Appreciate it.
Representative.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to testify for 2 additional bills, if that's all right. As I want to make sure all the other peace activists have a chance to speak on this bill since we're on the topic, but I'm very flexible.
If you can keep your testimony to 3 minutes. Would that be okay?
Yeah,
Just in the interest of,
absolutely.
like you said, because we have so many witnesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'd like to just testify on my bill so Prim Bill. This is House Bill 2791, which is an act concerning investments of the Massachusetts Pension Reserve Investment Management, or MassPrim. This bill promotes a responsible contractor policy, which would ensure that contractors, investors, managers, and consultants selected by the state's retirement system make investments that support fair wages and benefits for all workers. In addition, this bill ensures that no investment managed by MassPrim has the potential to eliminate public sector jobs. And although we have legal protections and the stated mission to ensure that employee benefit plans invest in the economic interest of employees without a responsible contractor policy, the investments of our pension funds are not acting on our commitment to our public sector employees. To illustrate that, I would like to share with you a true story of what happened without these protections in place. Rick Thorne worked as a school custodian for 23 years, serving the Chelmsford Public Schools. And for his service, Rick earned $18 an hour to clean floors, cut grass, and set up assemblies, and was a member of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees Union, Local 1703. And as a municipal employee for decades, he contributed to the state-funded pension. However, one day in June, Rick and his fellow custodians found out that they were getting fired because their jobs were getting privatized by an outsourcing company called Aramark, which is based in Philadelphia and funded by Rick's pension. After 23 years of service, Rick was fired and offered his same job back by Aramark for $8.50. In one fell swoop, his pay was cut in half from $8 an hour to $8.50 an hour. In other words, Rick's own pension plan was invested in a company that made money by slashing the same pensioners' wages through privatization. And unfortunately, this pattern is pervasive. Retirement funds of firefighters and teachers are invested in private firefighting companies and private public school service companies. By displacing workers like Rick, not only does he stop contributing to the funds, whose losses can harm other workers and retirees, but also displaced workers must often turn to public assistance for their survival, undermining the argument that taxpayers benefit from these transactions and investments. So public pension funds should be investing their retirement savings of government workers to secure the financial future of those workers, not to undermine it. So I have full confidence in the unwavering commitment our legislature has proven to us and to our sisters and brothers of organized labor time and time again to ensure that we are investing in responsible contractors. Just last month, I'm proud that we voted unanimously in favor of a strong project labor agreement in financing the reconstruction of the Holyoke Soldiers' Home and ensuring that the state's retirement system makes investments in line with responsible contractor policy is no different. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Representative. Any questions from the committee or from Co-Chair Brady? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move back to members of the public who are here to testify. Marcela Pinella.
Thank you. Just checking my sound.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Marcela Pinella, and I serve as Director of Sustainable Investing at Zevin Asset Management. We're a socially responsible investing firm based in Boston. I'm here as an investor to support House Bills 2597 for divestment from nuclear weapons and 2636 for divestment from arms sales to Saudi Arabia. Zevin Asset Management invests approximately $600 million on behalf of institutional clients and families who trust us to deliver superior returns and create positive social and environmental impacts with their money. To build socially responsible investment portfolios, we routinely exclude shares in companies in harmful industries, such as companies that profit substantially from incarceration, immigration detention, the nuclear industry, firearms, weapons of war, and tobacco products. We also help many of our clients avoid investing in fossil fuel companies, which are contributing to catastrophic climate change, lobbying against effective policies to combat climate change, and as a result, fundamentally mismanaging future business risks. These kinds of strategies beyond exclusion screens even are fundamental to socially responsible investment, an investment of any kind. It's now implemented by a range of investors who collectively manage approximately 12 trillion in assets. That's about $1 in $4 invested globally. As a fiduciary, these responsible investment strategies should be adopted by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Responsible investment in line with these bills would help keep our Commonwealth's public funds in line with our values of justice and peace. The Commonwealth would also be in very good company among cities, states, pension funds, and foundations that have successfully divested from a range of harmful extractive industries and companies. There's now overwhelming evidence that there is no penalty in terms of investment performance for investing in this way. Ask any of the asset owners that we have seen already doing this. For example, the New York State Pension Plan, the New Jersey Pension Fund, the Chicago Teachers Pension Fund, the California State Teachers Retirement System, and more. They have all moved to exclude private prison companies. In fact, responsible investing means reducing long-term risks related to human rights, business interruption, reputational damage, and it could really harm companies' bottom line and our Commonwealth's investment performance in the long term. Please do advance these bills. Thank you.
You're
Sorry,
muted,
I muted
Chairman.
myself. Any questions from the committee? Chair Brady? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Pinella, for your testimony. We appreciate it. Next up is Jennifer Rose. Jennifer Rose, are you here?
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Jennifer Rose, and I know others with expert knowledge about the war in Yemen and related arms sales will be speaking on those subjects, so I want to speak more personally. Many years ago, I was driving through Germany and saw a sign on the highway for Dachau. As a Jew, I felt I could not pass by without bearing witness to the concentration camp there. I knew, of course, what had happened in the camp, but I had imagined it isolated and hidden. I was completely unprepared to see how public it was, how close to the road. I kept asking myself, how could people do nothing? And yet, I live 3.4 miles from the Waltham headquarters of Raytheon, a major arms supplier for Saudi Arabia, which for 6 years has been bombing the country of Yemen, routinely striking hospitals, schools, food storage facilities, and water treatment plants. Like the people of Dachau, my neighbors and I have done nothing, and the killing, displacement, disease, and starvation continue. If we don't feel as if we can prevent terrible things, it's almost unbearable to know about them, but we must not turn away. So I'm here, both as a Jew and as a Waltham resident, to urge passage of H 2636 S 1735, bills to divest state pension funds from companies selling weapons to Saudi Arabia. The Raytheon CEO has said, our role is not to make policy, our role is to comply with it. In other words, one of the world's most powerful companies is meekly just following orders. And that is how we get Dachau and Auschwitz and Yemen. It's therefore incumbent upon our Commonwealth, especially as the site of Raytheon headquarters and numerous facilities, to take action. We must show this company and its peers that their decision to sell arms to the Saudis will have consequences. And we must not let our state tax dollars underwrite the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Now, I noticed, I think your testimony, which is fine, is directed at H 2636. We'll hear that in just a moment. You're signed up for both. And I now notice, looking at the witness list, that many people are signed up for both. Keeping in mind that I want to have time for everybody to testify, and that the number of witnesses grew over the last 2 days to double what they started at, like I said, the Monday deadline. What we'll do is, to be fair, when we get around to your name again, unless there's something really important that you want to add on the other, and you've heard the lead sponsors on these bills. If you want to add your voice to those, that would be great. If you have some new information, that would be fine. But just keep in mind that there may be some people that can't testify once if your name is here twice. Okay. So I'm going to go back to 2597. The next person I have on this list is Brian Garvey. And I'll be coming back to names one more time. Okay, you're here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I signed up to testify on behalf of H 2636 as well. I think your list may be out of order. I can testify now, or I can wait.
Why don't you testify now? But if you wanted to testify as to both, if you can fit that testimony in, that would be great.
Sure. I'm just testifying today on behalf of H 2636 S 1735.
Okay.
An act relative to pension divestment from companies selling weapons to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And I want to thank all the members of the committee for hearing our testimony today. My name is Brian Garvey. I'm a resident of Watertown, Massachusetts, and I'm also the assistant director of Massachusetts Peace Action, about which Cole Harrison told you. The Massachusetts Pension Fund is something that we should all be proud of. The pension fund ensures the dignity of essential workers and public servants in their golden years. Now, this law that we're talking about today is an emergency law. And I'll tell you why. The executive director of the UN World Food Program has said that Yemen is becoming the worst place on earth, and it is 100% man-made. It means no food, no fuel, no end in sight. This is hell. 400,000 children are at risk of dying right now, and we need support as soon as possible to stop this. And by reporting out this bill favorably from your committee today, you can provide some of that support. You have that ability. You can provide support to the people of Yemen by removing public funds from the companies that are profiting from the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Now, I think we've heard that a lot about Yemen over the past few years. What does it mean to be the world's worst humanitarian crisis? I think that Jennifer Rose, who just testified, was right to invoke the Holocaust. That's what it means when we say that Yemen is the worst humanitarian crisis in the world today. This is the Holocaust of our time. And I think we all have to ask ourselves, what are we going to do to stop it? Companies like Raytheon, based right here in Massachusetts, as Jennifer just said, their answer is, we don't make policy. Well, you all do make policy. You have the ability to say that this is not something we should invest public money in. You know, our pension fund that takes care of Massachusetts teachers who take care of our children.
Okay, I think we've lost your connection, Brian, but in addition to that, the 30-second warning had gone up. So what I'm going to do in the interest of time and fairness is ask you, if you have more to say, why don't you submit it in writing, because we've lost your connection. And I appreciate your testimony. I will ask if anyone has questions, though, because if we do, then maybe we can reconnect that way. Okay. All right. I'm going to move on. We've got two, and I do notice now that it may be that the next two names were here to sign up primarily for 2636 because they're here in both places. So why don't you offer your testimony on either of those bills? Paul Shannon, I think I've seen your picture here.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Good morning, everyone. Appreciate the chance to testify. You've heard several dimensions to this crisis in Yemen in the testimony already. The key thing I want to point out is that the Massachusetts pension plan has $240 million invested in Boeing, Raytheon, Lockheed, and General Dynamics. These are the companies that are making many or most of the weapons that Saudi Arabia has been using to create this terrible humanitarian catastrophe. Today, however, after 6 years of this war, the greatest danger to the people of Yemen comes from the naval and air blockade imposed by Saudi Arabia at this very moment. In a public appeal to President Biden, Senator Elizabeth Warren and 16 colleagues in the United States Senate stated the situation clearly. Quote, "We write to you regarding the Saudi Arabia-led coalition's use of blockade tactics in Yemen that has prevented food, medicine, and other crucial supplies from reaching millions in dire need during this senseless and protracted conflict." The senator continues, "The UN estimates that 16 million Yemenis will face hunger this year, and 400,000 children younger than 5 years old are at risk of dying of starvation if the conflict continues and these war tactics persist." The senator closes, quote, "Specifically, we request your administration demand that Saudi Arabia allow the unfettered delivery of food, fuel, and other humanitarian aid through the Hodeidah port under United Nations auspices to deliver humanitarian assistance to the Yemeni people. Failure to provide such access should have a direct impact on our relationship with Saudi Arabia, to include pending weapons sales, military cooperation, the provision of maintenance for warplanes and spare parts, as well as U.S.-Saudi ties more broadly. The current commercial fuel import standoff must end today and be decoupled from ongoing negotiations. This may be Massachusetts' last chance to make a strong statement in support of the survival of the people of Yemen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Paul. Our next witness is Francis Jeffries. Francis Jeffries, are you here? Okay, I'll call Francis again, but I'm gonna go back because I think our panel on the previous bill, which I think is 2640, I think that's what this note says, is Sarah Snow, Corey Alperson, Rosalie Anders, Stephen Jones, Rachel Wyan, and Sue Stafford. I think they're here now.
Excuse me, Chair Gordon. This is Nick Cantrell. I was unable to unmute myself earlier, but I was registered to testify as well on H 2597.
Okay, I will get to you next.
Okay, thank you.
Is that panel that I called there though?
Well, I saw John Gerson.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm here. Rachel is here.
Rachel, okay.
I think my panel is here. I think Corey's beginning.
Okay. Folks, someone should begin. We have 12 minutes for you. Rachel, maybe you should begin. Or Rachel, you're muted.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you very much. So this is for the public hearing Joint Committee on Public Service, testimony in support of H 2640. I'm a member of Stop the Money Pipeline panel. Originally, I was going to go towards the end, but I'll begin now. Good morning, Chairs Brady and Gordon, and Vice Chairs Feingold and Higgins. My name is Rachel Wyan. I'm a member of Mothers Out Front and Stop the Money Pipeline. I live in Cambridge. I'm a mother and a retired public school teacher. Today, I speak as a concerned citizen for climate justice. My career as a bilingual ESL teacher has been a joy, giving me the opportunity to work with elementary, high school, and adult students from all over the world who are learning English. And they also taught me so much about their home countries and cultures. From my own international and immigrant childhood, I have experienced firsthand how we are all globally connected, and what we do here in the US affects people around the world, especially in terms of the current climate crisis. I became aware of how CO2 emissions cause global warming and climate change at least about 15 years ago, and in the way that it pushed me to make many personal changes to reduce my carbon footprint, but more than that, to join with others, such as Mothers Out Front, to work for changes in policy that are necessary to end the destructive extraction and pollution and bring about a swift, just transition to renewable energy, for a sustainable, livable climate, for honoring treaties with Indigenous peoples, and for healing our planet Earth. When I retired from full-time teaching in 2009, I learned that my pension check came from funds partially invested in fossil fuel companies, and I was devastated. Soon began working with other retirees and current teachers to raise awareness of the need to divest our pensions now. My teachers union, the Mass Teachers Association, very soon after that, voted in a resolution in favor of divestment, and you will be receiving a letter to that effect, how important it is to divest our pension plan. But today, we're not talking about PRIM, we're talking about the need for local option, because right now we are at 420 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere, which is the highest level over 4 million years. This year, our state legislature, all of you who are distinguished members of this panel, of this committee, passed a forward-thinking climate act, the S9, the Next Generation Roadmap for Massachusetts climate policy. And this sets aside funds for adaptation for current and future changes we will be seeing because of the global heating and extreme weather. At the same time, does it make sense for us to be investing in the very same fossil fuels that cause the damage? So I think you can all see how important it is that this act for independent retirement boards to have the option to divest from fossil fuel companies should be passed favorably. Bill 2640. As a retired teacher receiving my pension from the Mass State Retirement System, I know the local option will prove it's indeed safe to divest. I hope that soon there will be legislation for PRIM to make this important change as well. This is for all of us, for our children, for our grandchildren. This action now could help to make the crucial difference to our communities and the future of our planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, I see in the chat, Corey Alperson is looking to be unmuted. Oh, it looks like you are, because I can't
got
do
it.
that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, sorry about that, guys. A little slow on the text here. So yes, I am speaking in support of 2640 as well. My name is Corey Alperstein. I am a member of 350 Mass and Stop the Money Pipeline MA. I live in Newton, which 2 years ago divested its stock investments from fossil fuel companies. The National Stop the Money Pipeline Coalition, over 150 organizations strong, is working to change the status quo within the investment community, holding the financial backers of climate chaos accountable. In Massachusetts, our informal coalition includes participants from 350 Mass, Climate Finance Action, Mothers Out Front, Sierra Club, XR Boston, Elders Climate Action, Teachers for Climate Safe Pensions, Sunrise, and others. Massachusetts climate, social justice, and labor organizations have worked for over 8 years to pass pension fund divestment legislation in Massachusetts without success. For a long time, the divestment movement, which started on college campuses, rested in the domain of social and environmental impact, and fiduciary managers could easily dismiss it as outside their purview. But the bottom line has changed. Our urgent moral and scientific arguments now align with economics. So we are calling once again for divestment, mindful that this time we have a compelling financial argument as well. Nearly all public pension funds in the US are invested in fossil fuel companies, and thus using our tax dollars to support the powerful polluters that are causing the climate crisis and violating indigenous rights. To make matters worse, state and city pension funds investments in fossil fuels actually place our pension funds at risk. Big coal, oil, and gas companies are underperforming compared to the rest of the market. And yet many of these companies are actually expanding fossil fuel infrastructure, from tar sand and gas pipelines to fracking wells and offshore drilling, even digging new coal mines and building new coal-fired power plants. Even the International Energy Agency came out with a dire report 2 weeks ago saying we must all end all new fossil fuel expansion this year. If we stop the money pipeline, we can make this happen. More than 1,300 institutions worldwide with assets of over 14 trillion have already committed to divest from fossil fuels. Big pension funds like the state of New York, are taking action. The latest, our neighbor, Maine, passed legislation yesterday to divest its 17 billion state pension fund of coal, oil, and gas by 2026. Massachusetts must act as well. H 2640 frees municipalities to divest their fossil fuel investments from PERAC. It is not controversial and will enable local governments to move forward while our legislators consider the mission of directing PRIM to divest its fossil fuel investments as well. We hope this hearing is a sign that our legislators understand both the moral and financial impact of continued investment of public retirement funds in the fossil fuel industry. We hope this will finally be the time for action ahead of both climate and financial disaster, when there is still a way to shift our resources to sound investments that will ensure a clean energy future for both retirees and their great-grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another member of your panel who wishes to testify, or are you here in support of each other?
This is Steve Jones. I can speak if it's appropriate. Okay. Can you hear me, as they say?
Can hear you, yes.
Okay. My name is T. Stephen Jones. I live in Northampton. I'm a retired public health physician who worked at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for 26 years. In support of H 2640, I will illustrate how fossil fuels create health problems with a little-known link between childhood asthma and cooking with what is sometimes called natural gas. You know the well-documented increases in atmospheric carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, the warming of the earth, and the existential threat of climate change and climate chaos. I will use gas cooking stoves as a small-scale model of the health threats of obtaining and using fossil fuels. Because the pollution from burning methane gas in a gas stove is trapped inside of people's homes, we have an easy-to-understand connection between the pollution generated by burning fossil fuels and a health threat. About 1/3 of homes have gas cooking stoves that burn methane gas to cook food. As gas is burned, it creates nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, very small particles, formaldehyde, and other toxic chemicals. Because the gas is burned inside a home, the contaminants blend into the air in the home, creating in-home air pollution. Homes with gas cooking stoves have increased nitrogen dioxide levels. Nitrogen dioxide irritates the respiratory tract. Children living in homes with gas cooking stoves have more asthma and more severe asthma than kids in homes without gas cooking stoves. How does the gas industry respond to documentation of this threat to children? They do so by promoting the cry, "They want to take away our gas stoves." Extracting, transporting, and burning gas are all bad for our health. Reining in fossil fuel companies will help reduce those threats. How is this relevant to H 2640 for local option to divest from fossil fuels? Some local retirement systems are concerned about climate change and the existential threat to the earth and all of us. The methane gas stove linked to childhood asthma illustrates how using fossil fuels threatens us. Local and Commonwealth retirement systems should be allowed to divest from fossil fuel companies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know you have other members of the panel, and it's staff that's looking at the timing. So do you have more to add, or are you here in support?
I have more to add.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Sarah Snow. I'm a high school teacher, a member of Stop the Money Pipeline Coalition, and organizers of Teachers for Climate Safe Pensions. I'm happy to be able to talk to you today because my class has been cancelled due to MCAS testing at my school. So I'm sitting in a practice room. I managed to find an empty room to talk to you today. First, I'd like to thank Representatives Fernandez and Livingston for championing this bill, to thank the bill's petitioners, and to thank the more than 85 local representatives from Somerville to Beverly, Ashland to Malden, Winchester, Winthrop, Watertown, and many, many more who supported this legislation in its previous incarnation as H440. While it's true that Bill H2640 does not directly affect us teachers, it is nevertheless very important to so many of us who are concerned about our pensions. Why? Because by allowing local retirement boards to choose to divest from fossil fuels, the bill takes climate risk into account. It's about responsible investing, and it safeguards the value of retirees' future benefits. MTA Climate Action Network, a 200-member group of teachers, current and retired, has submitted written testimony to this hearing today. I urge you to read it. The fact is that the argument against fossil fuel investments is no longer just a moral one. Happily now, we can make an economic argument for divesting from fossil fuel investments. The fact is that coal, oil, and gas companies are underperforming compared to the rest of the market. These holdings present a clear risk to any long-term investment like a pension. There is no doubt that fossil fuel companies, and no one knows this better than they do, are sitting in a carbon bubble. But the assets on their balance sheets cannot be realized. In other words, all the coal, oil, and gas that they own cannot be extracted and burned without doing untold harm to the climate. We knew this before the Paris Climate Agreement, but Paris put a figure on it, 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Now it's measurable. Now these fossil fuel assets are becoming stranded. Now people's pensions are at risk. Our chief investment officers should be very, very worried.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I need you to wrap up.
Yes, of course. Luckily, this bill doesn't require us to dig into our souls to answer this question. It does not ask for sweeping change. It's not insisting that fiduciaries divest. It's just allowing them to. It's a small step for mankind, but it's a symbolic one, paving the way, we hope, for more substantive legislation that addresses the dangers of climate risk. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. That's the time that we have for your panel. If you have witnesses that had more to add, then what I'd invite you to do is submit written testimony. As I said in the beginning of the hearing, written testimony will be considered just as effective as verbal testimony, but it will just give the witnesses who are here to testify on this and the other bills a chance to participate. So thank you very much for all of your testimony. Representative Farley Bouvier, you're here to testify. I think you've got a constituent.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I am here with Joe Durant, and we are here to testify on H2638, an act relative to the size of the distribution boards. I should have started with, I'm Tricia Farley Bouvier, the representative from the 3rd Berkshire District. MOSES, which is the Massachusetts Organization of State Engineers and Scientists, represent publicly employed individuals across the various state agencies in Massachusetts. This includes civil engineers at MassDOT, environmental analysts at the Department of Environmental Protection, and employees who design and maintain state parks through the Department of Conservation and Recreation. We're here today specifically to talk about the GIC and the makeup of that board. And I know that this committee hears these bills similar to this all the time. But really, what is at the heart of this? That only 6 of the 17 seats on the GEIC are currently designated for public employees or retirees. Clearly, that is a problem. As a result, the GIC continues to shift millions onto employees and retirees through increased copays and deductibles. One of the reasons Massachusetts is able to attract and retain talented scientists and engineers despite the much higher salaries in the private sector is through the benefits package. Should healthcare costs continue to rise, it will become increasingly difficult for agencies tasked with critical functions to attract and retain talented staff to keep Massachusetts running. We need to keep healthcare affordable to enable employees to better support their family, and therefore we can protect the Massachusetts middle class. We must continue to be mindful of increasing co-payments and deductibles beyond the current levels and respect the financial constraints many households face in uncertain times. The very best people to be able to do that are the actual representatives of the public employees. The GIC has an opportunity to recenter the voice of public employees. State employees should have an equal and valued voice at the table when it comes to decisions regarding their health insurance. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to turn it over to Joe Durant, former president and longtime partner in this work. Joe?
Thank you, Representative. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you, Representative, and thank you, Chair Gordon and Chair Brady and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today in favor of House Bill 2638 and Senate Bill 1760 and a number of other bills before the committee designed to address a serious and alarming trend in the way decisions are made with state employee health care. For many years, the GIC was seen by our members as a commission that made tough but fair decisions regarding our health care benefits. While the final plans and rates might not always be exactly what we wanted, we had confidence that the commission and its leadership understood the impact of their decisions on the lives and families of our members. Unfortunately, this is no longer the case. Finding the best option for both Commonwealth and the employees is no longer the guiding principle. Instead, it's all about the bottom line. As a result, public employees have steadily taken a higher percentage, paid a higher percentage of their healthcare costs, while the state has steadily decreased their share. Despite the commission having power to determine the benefits and cost structure of health insurance for the bulk of the public workforce, like the representative mentioned, only 6 of the 17 seats of GIC are currently designated as public employees or retirees. As a result, over the past 6 years, the GIC has voted to shift over $300 million onto the employees and retirees through increased co-pays and deductibles, adding a significant financial burden on our members' out-of-pocket expenses. In addition, premium increases have steadily risen, all when the GIC has had excess funds. When healthcare costs rise, both parties should share the burden of the cost. What the GIC is termed as cost sharing is not. It's really cost shifting onto the members and their families. Frankly, our voice is not being heard and the deck is stacked against us. That is why it's so important to change the makeup of the GIC and give public employees a fair voice on the commission. And that's what these bills do. Just want to mention that we also strongly support House Bill 2573, House Bill 2587, and House Bill 2710. Each of these bills would begin to restore the confidence in the GIC and provide some relief for public employees who are struggling to meet their healthcare costs every day. We ask that you report these bills out of committee favorably, and we look forward to working with the committee to find the best solution to fixing the broken GIC. Thank you very much for your time today. And we take any questions if you have any.
Well, thank you very much, Representative and Joe. appreciate your testimony, and I appreciate the partnership that we have as we work with working families in Massachusetts to address, in this case, their healthcare needs and their financial needs. So thank you for that. We certainly considering everything that we've got in this bill. It's important. Any questions from the committee? Chair Brady?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank the rep and Joe for their testimony as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We
Thank you.
appreciate you accommodating us today too on the schedule. I think the way of doing it this way is working out great, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Chairman. So you might have created a new model here.
Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. Next up, we have Representative Consalvo, who has also a representative of Moses, I think.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to testify on House Bill 3730, an act relative to the Group Insurance Trust Fund. And I'm proud to be here today with Patrick Russell, president of Moses, and I'm proud to partner with Moses on this bill. This is another important bill to sort of level the playing field for members and employees and retirees across the Commonwealth as it relates to the Group Insurance Commission and the amount of funding that is in the Group Insurance Commission. You'll hear Patrick describe it much better than I will, but I urge your committee to give a favorable report to this. This bill right now would ensure that all of the funding that's been allocated for health insurance actually goes towards health insurance for the members of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the members of Moses. Right now, you either have an 80-20 or a 75-25 split in your health insurance costs. Members are paying the full 25 or 20% as part of their share, but the Commonwealth share often doesn't reach the 80 or 75% funding contribution. And when it doesn't, that money goes back to the general fund. And what this bill would do, and you'll hear some interesting statistics from Patrick, which this bill will do is put that money what it was intended to do and put it into the Group Insurance Commission Trust Fund to be used to offset out-of-pocket expenses or lower premiums, but put it back to use to help the members who are in the Group Insurance Commission for their healthcare costs. I believe strongly and support Moses completely on this in terms of that the money that is budgeted for these healthcare costs should go to the members and should go to the people who it was intended for their healthcare costs and not back to the general fund. So if in fact the state's contribution doesn't meet that budgeted limit, I would urge strongly that through this legislation, it doesn't go back to the general fund, that we put it back in the Group Insurance Trust Fund, that it goes back to making sure it was what it was intended for, and that is to be used by the people it was intended to serve, the state employees and retirees and the members from Moses who do such incredible work across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That money should be returned back to help offset costs, to lower premiums, to help with out-of-pocket expenses. And I'm glad to partner with Moses on this, and I'm honored to support this bill and urge your favorable report. And at this time, I'd love to turn it over to Patrick Russell, who will talk in further detail about why this bill is so important. Patrick?
Thank you, Representative. And thank you, chairs and members of the committee. I'm going to go over a couple of numbers, but first I'll lay out how the GIC works. And I know most of you know that because you're in the GIC and your staff members are as well. In the spring each year, the GIC sets the rates and tells the members what the rates are going to be, the premium rates. We know that our split is either the 20 or the 25%, and that the Commonwealth is at 80 or 75%. And I'll keep the conversation to 80-20. Everyone decides what premium they're going to pay and what healthcare they're going to go with, and the premium that will be associated with that, so they know they can plan with their family on how much they're going to spend. Then the legislature appropriates the value of the 80% or the 75%, but they do not deposit the money into the trust fund of the GIC. So throughout the year, the GIC spends the money that is contributed by the members, and then they make up the remainder with the appropriation amounts. And over the last 5 years, they've reverted back each year millions of dollars. And just in the last 3 years, they've reverted back $109 million, $79 million, and $71 million. That's 2018, 2019, and 2020, where all of those years, our healthcare premiums, and yours as well, have increased. The Commonwealth has been allowed to revert back the figures I mentioned to a percentage of 6.9%, 4.2%, and 4.3%. So they don't spend, they only appropriate the money of the 80%, and if it's not spent, it goes back. And it's been steadily going back at a rate of around $70 million in the last 2 years, each year 69 and 71. And this year they're on track for $85 million to be reverted back. The goal of this legislation is to have that entire appropriation, which we see as the premium cost, be deposited into the trust accounts of the GIC to be used for what it was intended to under Chapter 32A, which is paying for healthcare for individuals. And just to touch back on what Joe mentioned with the representative earlier, in the last several years, our copays, our deductibles, and the tiering of our healthcare, of our doctors and our nurses and the care that we need has been changed. So the more is coming out of our pockets, which is creating less of a bill on the appropriation side. So we urge you to make a change to Chapter 32 so that instead of an appropriation, it will be the premium costs will go to the GIC, and that we can work with the GIC to do exactly what Rep. Consalvo mentioned, is to work on bringing down our premiums or shifting money to our out-of-pocket expenses. And I thank you for your time, and I'll take any questions. And I know it's complicated math, but we'll send you some charts and some things that you can look over.
Sorry about the mute, sorry. That's very important, and as with everyone, written testimony is welcome and will be considered, and it's valuable. So thank you for that. What I want to do now is I've read, at least in the first go around, the people here signed up to testify for 2797. If there's some of those are the same people who are signed up to testify for 2636. So we will likely get to the same people on the second go around that way. But I'm going to move on in order of the bills. So the next, so that bill will come up. But the next witness is a panel, Timothy Vamosi and Paul Jacques, on 2604. Paul Jakes, I'm sorry, 2604.
Good morning, morning, Chairman Brady and Chairman Gordon. How are you doing today? Is Vamosi on? Is he on?
Yeah.
We just, in the interest of time, we do have some other bills we're going to talk about in the next panel, but I just want to go on the record in support of House Bill 2604. We have submitted written testimony and feel that's sufficient for this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions? Okay, thank you very much, Paul, for your testimony. Now that'll bring us back to 2636, and again, the same names that we called on 2597 are going to appear again. But that's so. What I'm going to ask is, if you already spoke, if you could keep your testimony brief. But if you haven't, then that's fine too. So Cole Harrison, I think you've spoken already. So.
I did speak already. Could I request that you call on Joseph Gerson? You called him earlier. He's on now, and he has to leave in a few minutes.
Okay.
I can submit mine in writing. If I'd rather give priority to a number of people. Jonathan King, Peter Metz, they all were called, but had trouble joining for one reason or another.
Okay, I'll do that if you want to sort of yield your time to Joseph Gerson.
I will yield time.
Again, I always just want to be fair, and the people who have been waiting the longest and here the longest, that's why I'm just going down this list, and I'll get back to those. But that's okay. Why don't Joseph Gerson, why don't you if you're here. I'm not sure he's here. All right, I tell you what, why don't we go to Peter Metz and then we'll go back to Joseph Gerson. Okay.
Or Nick Cantrell is another one.
Yes, I've been waiting from the beginning for 2597.
Who's that? Nick Cantrell?
Okay. I wasn't able to unmute for 2597, nuclear weapon divestment.
I've got you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Gordon, Chair Brady. My name's Nick Cantrell. I'm the founder and owner of Green Future Wealth Management. I also serve on the Mass Peace Action Nuclear Divestment Working Group and sit on the board of nuclearban.us, Massachusetts-based not-for-profit. And I'm an expert on nuclear weapon divestment. There's a compelling moral and ethical argument for divesting from nuclear weapons manufacturers that's been made. I'm actually not here to make that argument or speak to that. I'm here to make the financial case for divestment from nuclear weapons manufacturers, and that we owe a fiduciary obligation to the participants of the Massachusetts state pension system to divest. There's a very small list of 18 companies that are involved in nuclear weapons manufacturing. Currently, they comprise less than 1% of the assets of the Massachusetts State Pension Fund. So a complete divestment should leave more than 99% of the current pension assets unchanged. There are significant financial threats to owning investments in these companies. These companies have historically underperformed their peers while taking more risk. I completed research in 2019 that was presented to the Yale Endowment. It was also supplied to Dr. Matthew Bolton at the International Disarmament Institute and was supplied to the New York City pension system, showing that over 3, 5, and 10-year periods, nuclear weapons manufacturers underperformed their peer group while also taking on more risk. This has been shown by other researchers. There's a very well-documented discussion piece that was a part of the negotiations at New York City pension system called Nuclear Weapons Are a Risky Business, put out by the International Disarmament Institute. It's available on my website at greenfuturewealth.com. It's also available at the International Disarmament Institute website. It's well documented that these investments in these companies underperform their peer group. These assets have been underperforming since before the passage of the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. They're likely to continue to underperform, and it's likely to exacerbate that. There are 54 countries that have ratified the treaty, and it is now legally binding there. These are major markets: South Africa, Mexico, Austria, Ireland, New Zealand. Due to how the treaty wording is constructed, it will be illegal for these countries to have anything to do with manufacture, finance, distribution. Essentially, these countries, these markets will be closed to these companies that are involved in the manufacture of nuclear weapons. As more countries ratify, the more markets will close to them. This is similar to what happened to the cluster munitions UN treaty, as well as the landmine treaty. In both cases, the United States did not sign on to the treaty, but in both cases, manufacturers of these instruments ended up becoming social pariahs in the investment community. I see that we're at my time. I want to be respectful. I'm happy to answer any further questions, but I think we have a fiduciary obligation to divest from these companies for the pensioners of the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cantrell. That was important testimony, and I appreciate you sharing it. Do we have any questions from the committee? Thank you. As we continue to work through these issues, we'll be circling back to many of the people who are here. Next on the list is Ira Helfand. Is Ira Helfand here? Okay. How about Christopher? Let's make sure you're here on this list. Hold on, let me see who's next. Joe Gerson, are you here yet?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay. I'm here to testify in favor of S-1703 and H-2597. I'm the president of the Campaign for Peace, Disarmament, and Common Security. My doctorate is in politics and international security studies. In 1980, I helped to launch the nuclear weapons freeze campaign that contributed to the end of the Cold War, and deeply aware of the Navy's history of nuclear weapons accidents. In 1983, I led the successful campaign to prevent the creation of a naval nuclear weapons base in Boston Harbor, just across from a Logan runway. I work closely with nuclear weapons survivors from Hiroshima, Nagasaki, United States, and other countries. Senator Warren tells us that the U.S. is slated to spend $44.5 billion on nuclear weapons this year. Last year, the U.S. spent $37.4 billion, more than all the other nuclear weapons states combined. When we are talking about preparations for ending all life on this planet, we need to be, I'm sorry to say, more honest and civil. In a word, our country's preparations for nuclear Armageddon is obscene. It is suicidal madness, and that our pension and other state funds are invested in weapon systems which, if used, would inflict genocide or worse, nuclear winter and omnicide, is criminal. Nuclear weapons are not about defense or deterring nuclear attacks. As the first President Bush's doctrine for joint nuclear operations informed us, and I quote, "The focus of U.S. deterrence is to influence potential adversaries to withhold action intended to harm U.S. national interests." Daniel Ellsberg, who served as senior nuclear advisor to Presidents Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon, has testified that since Hiroshima and Nagasaki, bombings which military leaders at the time advised were not necessary to end the war, Ellsberg tells us that the U.S. has prepared or threatened to initiate nuclear attacks during international crises and wars, actually up to 30 times. Almost always these threats have been made in relationship to non-nuclear weapon states, to secure our oil under their sands, to ensure the success of a military coup, or to ensure U.S. neocolonial Asia-Pacific hegemony. Today, with U.S. first strike nuclear, with U.S. nuclear first strike doctrine, its forces on hair trigger alert, and with our military engaged in provocative military actions in the South and East China Seas, the Baltic and Black Seas, and in and around Taiwan, an accident or a miscalculation could all too easily trigger a conflict that can escalate beyond control, as nearly happened during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Who profits from fueling the existential threat of nuclear holocaust? Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, Raytheon Technologies, and Draper Labs here on this side of the river. Friends, 8 decades ago, Bayer and IG Farben manufactured Zyklon B, the gas used to exterminate millions of Jews and others in the Nazi Holocaust. A single nuclear warhead targeted against Beijing, Pyongyang, St. Petersburg, or Moscow would kill many more than perished in what is widely understood to be the worst crime in human history. I'm just finishing last sentence. The launching of even a quarter of the U.S. nuclear arsenal would inflict nuclear winter, ending all life as we know it. It's time to end our complicity in these preparations for the end of life.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any Chair Brady or any members of the committee have any questions? Thank you very much. Next, I have Peter Metz. Peter Metz, are you here?
He's here, but he's muted.
He's muted, okay. Peter, can you unmute? Can you, okay. I'll call you next since you're here. But how about Jonathan King?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Good afternoon. Chairs Grady and Gordon, thanks for holding this hearing. My name is Jonathan King. I'm an emeritus professor of molecular biology at MIT, where I chair the annual Reducing the Threat of Nuclear War conferences. I also serve as co-chair of Mass Peace Action, which represents thousands of households across Massachusetts. In 1997, the Massachusetts legislature enacted into a law an act which prohibited the state pension funds from investing in companies with significant profits from manufacturer's sale of tobacco products. Chapter 119 of the Act in 1997 prohibits the state retirement systems from making any new investments in tobacco. In passing that Divestment Act, legislators recognized that the Public Employee Pension Fund should not be supporting an industry whose products are undermining the health and welfare of Massachusetts employees, residents, and retirees or their families. After Massachusetts led the way, 7 other states passed similar legislation, significantly weakening the power of the tobacco industry, saving hundreds of thousands of people from prolonged suffering from lung cancer or related diseases. So we're not asking you to establish a precedent. The precedent is already well established in Massachusetts law. Today, we're asking you to build on this precedent and pass legislation that would prevent the public pension funds from investing in companies that design, manufacture, or maintain nuclear weapons. We're not talking about getting rid of any of the thousands of nuclear weapons on hair trigger alert. We're talking about trying to prevent the building of more nuclear weapons, more lethal, more dangerous, which does nothing to increase national security. As you've heard, if any of these weapons are used, it would be a catastrophe. Nuclear weapons obliterate every living creature in the blast zone. One modern bomb on Boston incinerates every man, woman, and child inside 128. Now, you may be wondering, we have been asked many times, why are we addressing the state legislature? Isn't this federal policy? It's because you, our legislators, are the ones most directly responsible for the health and well-being of your constituents. And so it's right and proper that we address you. So the most dangerous aspect of this continuing manufacture and modernization of new nuclear weapons is it's its contribution to increasing the chances of inadvertent or intentional nuclear war. As other countries watch us trying to invest in new nuclear weapons, the anxieties of Russia, China, North Korea, and others, they are driven to upgrade their nuclear weapons. This escalating loop greatly increases the risk of inadvertent or intentional exchange. You can cut down the likelihood of the new weapons being added to the arsenal by divesting the pension fund from stocks in such companies. You've already heard that these stocks are a very small fraction of the value of the pension fund, not going to have any economic impact except favorable impact.
Thank you. I see your time is up.
Thank you.
And I thank you for concluding. And I thank you for your comments. They're very important. Chair Brady or members of the committee have any questions? Okay, thank you very much for your testimony. Christopher Spicer.
Yes, hello. Good morning. I am going to adjust my remarks and I will follow up with written testimony. Following Nick Cantrell, Jonathan King, Dr. Joseph Gerson, all of whom have helped form me in this community of Mass Peace Action. I'm part of the Disarmament Working Group Direct Action Subcommittee. And what that means is that we take very personal responsibility. Part of the personal responsibility we do in giving witness to you, again, in my case, I'm going to follow by adding to the moral argument. I had my studies at Boston College in theology. I was a former Jesuit, priest in training, that is. And I'm friends of a group of people who took very seriously their personal responsibility, a part of the Plowshares movement. They went directly to the site of sin. And at Kings Bay, Georgia, they decried the sin of this nature. They prayed rosaries, they poured human blood, and they did so on the behest of their moral conscience. As we speak, entering his 24, 48 hours of time, Mark Colville has begun to serve his time for that action. So I've done the reading of what it means to be looking in Massachusetts, and I understand that this particular bill that we're talking about is going to affect it's not going to affect the 87 such companies in Massachusetts working on the F-35. Okay, we don't have to worry about small companies. We don't have to worry about the 1,700 jobs in the state that are going to be affected by the F-35, for example. You can't kill the F-35, the Aviation Weekly reporter said. Bruce Gellerman reports about this in his article going into a Custom Machine Inc. It's a subcontractor for Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin distributed its 235,000 component part suppliers to over 46 states. So when it comes to the 87 companies that are working on those components here in Massachusetts, a place like Custom Machine with 67 employees in Woburn, that's a family owned, is not affected, not threatened by your bill. Okay, so as the moral argument of what harm could this do, I want to assure you that when you go after it and divest from Lockheed Martin, you're still protecting your constituents. You can add that. I would ask you to report this bill out of your committee, and I'll get back for the time.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions from the committee or Chair Brady? Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Metz, can you unmute? I see you there. Okay. How about Francis Jeffries? Okay. Let's go to Godha Bapuji. Is that right?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Greetings. For the record, my name is Godha Bapuji, and I'm here for H2636 and S1735 as a security professional, a founder of my social organization, vested in implementing United Nations Security Council resolutions at the grassroots level, a member of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and an individual committed to building peace and security and resilience in our communities. Thank you for having me here today for this public hearing, Mr. Chairman, and respected members of the committee. For context, I quote a statement from an article by National Conference of State Legislatures dated July 2019. Pension funds often hold mutual funds or exchange-traded funds, which include stocks from many companies and many industries. The complexities of divesting carry costs, from executing the transactions to monitoring a constantly shifting mix of investments to assure compliance with state laws. But our investment decisions cannot be guided solely by risks and returns. Environmental, social governance, and socially responsible investments require us to also consider operational and reputational risks along with social good. And for me, human rights comes top of these factors. Divestment is just one avenue for socially responsible investing. We cannot afford to turn a blind eye on the atrocities of war and the impact it has on the lives of people, especially women and children, the elderly, and the disabled, and the gross human rights violations that happen under the pretext of a bigger strategy. Human rights are inalienable rights, and therefore our Commonwealth must not engage in funding or gaining revenues from anything that violates these inalienable rights of humans anywhere in the world. Although I will not repeat what other members have already said so eloquently articulated. I also quote from the Defense News article dated February 15, 2021, that the CEO of one of the corporations is reported to have noted in an investor call on January 26th that the company is backing off sales of an offensive weapon system to an unnamed Middle Eastern customer, as it believes license may not be granted by the government, pending the wide-scale review that the Biden administration has requested. Now, as a social entrepreneur myself, whilst I understand that the corporate law requires fiduciary duty towards its shareholders and that there are costs to such decisions, I also know that the corporations in question, headquartered in Waltham, Massachusetts, would like to live by their values advertised on their websites. Acting with integrity and doing the right thing, for example, is one that you will find on one company's website. Therefore, as an informed international relations, peace, and security trained member of the public supporting this bill, I think divesting from the pensions investment is a morally and ethically higher place to take for us as a state. I know companies that truly believe in this higher moral and ethical purpose will swiftly work to halt their weapon sales to countries that do not live by human values. If not, divesting mass prim from such corporations will ensure we do not have a share in what I call the blood money of war. keeping in mind Biden administration's announcement on review of Saudi arms sales and pause. Therefore, I request our esteemed State House here to support and advance the bill H 2636 and S 1735 relative to the pensions divestment from companies selling weapons to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and as a multiple forms of taxpayer and a proud resident of our beautiful Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I offer my support in favor of the bill as a civilian. My emphasis is on human rights and human security.
Okay.
Thank you.
To wrap up. Thank you very much for your testimony. I appreciate it. Any questions from the committee or from Chair Brady? Okay, let's go to Ian Harrington.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this morning on this important issue. I'm Ian Harrington, a resident of Wayland, and I'm speaking first to H2597. There are numerous celebrations around the earth on this past January 22nd, but we in the U.S. missed out on them. That is the day the United Nations Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons entered into force. For those nations that are party to the treaty, it prohibits the development, testing, production, stockpiling, stationing, transfer, use, and threat of use of nuclear weapons, as well as assistance and encouragement to the prohibited activities. To me, the banning of these nightmarish weapons is truly something to celebrate. I wish we could have been part of that celebration. As a retired transportation planner, a part of the money I made during my over 30 years working for the Commonwealth is in the state pension funds. I strongly object to its use to invest in companies that produce nuclear weapons. Instead, I would hope the state pension funds would be invested in businesses which make positive contributions to the community. Do we really want the Massachusetts pension funds to have nearly $500 million, that's $500 million, invested in the 27 companies that produce nuclear weapons around the world? A lifelong Quaker, I say no with all the strength of my faith. I also strongly believe many others share my objection. Have you ever seen a bake sale for nuclear weapons? No. Community efforts to raise funds are for organizations that make positive contributions. Similarly, the 2012 Budget for All ballot question in Massachusetts, which called for the shifting of the federal budget from the military to civilian needs, passed by about 660,000 to 220,000, winning in every community in which it was on the ballot. Please help our Commonwealth to make better use of its pension funds by reporting out favorably Representative Connolly's H2597 and Senator Eldridge's S7193. I also would like to address H2636. I also ask if we really want the Massachusetts pension funds to have roughly $240 million invested in companies that sell weapons to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I say no with all the strength of my Quaker faith. I strongly object to the investment of state pension funds in companies that produce weapons that are used in Yemen. Again, I would hope the state pension funds would instead be invested in businesses which make positive contributions.
Thank you for your
testimony. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Harrington. I appreciate it. Any questions from the committee? Okay, hearing none. I see Representative Elugardo is here with us. Did you wish to testify? I think you're here to testify on 2636.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for taking me out of turn. And I know our office had some glitches in getting me registered, so I really appreciate you making sure that I get to address the esteemed committee today.
Can I say thank you for choosing the time? Thank you for working with us.
Oh, thank you. As you know, esteemed members of the committee and chairs, H2636 would require divestment from any of the companies selling weapons to Saudi Arabia. So you've heard a lot about it, but this is Raytheon, Boeing, General Dynamics, and Lockheed Martin. Before we go into just some of the details of why I am really asking you to report this out favorably, I do want to just acknowledge, maybe it's at least a baby elephant in the room, that a lot of times these types of issues get really politicized. And I know that my esteemed Republican colleagues, especially on the House, and other conservative colleagues know my great support for our veterans and for our members of the military. And I just want to make sure that we're hearing each other, hearing me out in a clear way. I'm not making a political statement with this bill. I'm making a statement of leadership and ethics. And so just here are a few things I have to say about it, and I hope you will strongly consider reporting it out favorably this session. So the bill does exclude any companies that agree not to renew arms contracts with Saudi Arabia. And the reason for that is, as you know, the reason I filed it this time, I know it's been filed before, is President Biden pledged to remove America's contribution to that war because of its high levels of violence and violations of civilian rights and many other human rights abuses. So we have about $240 million, is the latest count that I've heard, invested in securities with those 4 companies. And these companies have guided bombs and other high-tech weapons that they're sending to Saudi Arabia, which have been documented to play a key role in thousands of civilian deaths and in physical destruction that we do not want to participate in as state employees. And so, you know, these weapons are responsible for widespread outbreaks of infectious diseases and starvation. There's indiscriminate bombing also of civilian targets, as you probably know, but what you may not know is just on Wednesday, Save the Children released a report that said nearly a quarter of those civilian casualties are children. So these are the kinds of things that I think are a little bit more bright lines for us than some of the other more politicized issues around divestment, which, while I'm in favor for, that's not what I'm standing here before you with today. This feels like a more cut and dry issue. Our congressional delegation has called for America to halt arms sales to Saudi Arabia. You know, we really believe in our congressional delegation. That includes both our senators. So I'm asking us to stand behind our administration. They have a lot of challenges that we don't have with this very simple step we can take. And this is a way we can exercise leadership once again as Massachusetts, to be the first out of the gate to say, you know, what we can do, we will do. But most importantly, it's essential that our pension funds, mine and yours, aren't being used to indiscriminately kill children anywhere in the world. And we want to make that very strong statement, not only to the 4 companies involved here, but as Massachusetts has a tendency to do, to the entire nation, that we're going to put our money where our mouth is. And when we stand for civil and human rights, we do that in a bipartisan, nonpartisan way. We do that across the board, and we do that while supporting, in my case, while supporting our valid military interventions to help the world in places where that is happening. This is not where that's going on. Our military is not involved. And so I just want to be clear that this is not like a Republican Democrat issue. This is an issue of a nation that is engaged in indiscriminate killing of civilians. And our pension dollars, our public dollars, are actually going to support that. And specifically, in a very surgical way, I'm asking you to remove that by reporting this bill out favorably. And then we could hopefully talk with Ways and Means about some of the money side of it.
Thank you very much, Representative. Appreciate your testimony. Does anyone have any questions from the committee? Okay. Next on the list, Lenore Alanis, if I'm pronouncing that right. Okay. How about this? We have 2 witnesses that have already. We have only 2 people who testified on 2597 who also signed up for 2636. If I could ask you to, because you had a chance to testify before, if you're here, I'll call the names because then that will wrap up the testimony on 2636. I'll do that, but please be mindful that there are people here in the hearing who haven't testified yet at all. Okay, so the first is Annika Lof.
I actually believe that what I was going to say has already been said by other people, so I'd like to yield my time.
I truly appreciate that. Thank you very much, and we'll note the support that you just provided for others who have testified before you. The next is Jonathan King.
You're muted, Jonathan.
All right. Thank you, Chair Gordon. Very briefly, the same point that I made with respect to the nuclear weapons divestment, that Massachusetts has already established the precedent of divesting from pension funds and tobacco companies. The Chapter 119 of the Acts of 1997. That also informs your decision with respect to getting rid of the investment in companies that are selling weapons to Saudi Arabia, the absolutely worst, most backward, most retrograde nation on earth, an absolute monarchy. The notion that we should be supporting their military investments. So thank you, and I hope you will report out the Saudi bills also.
Thank you, Mr. King. I appreciate it. Now, next, we're going to have a panel testifying on H 2641. Paul Jake, Craig Hardy, Rich McKinnon, Billy Cabral, with Scott Starbard.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chairman Brady, Chairman Gordon, members of the committee and staff. Thank you for this opportunity. We'll keep it brief in the interest of time. For the record, my name is Paul Jakes, Legislative Agent for the Professional Firefighters of Massachusetts. Joined today is Craig Hardy, Legislative Agent, and Scott Starbard, Falmouth Firefighters Local 1397. We have submitted written testimony and also put in there a list of bills that we do want to go on the record of support. We would like to speak briefly on House Bill 2641, Senate Bill 1685, an act relative to fair worker representation on joint purchasing group committees. I'm going to turn it over to Scott Starbard now to provide testimony on that.
Good morning. Everybody hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, Chair Gordon, Chair Brady, and members of the committee. Today I speak in support of House Bill 2641 and Senate Bill 1685. I promise my comments will be brief. My name is Scott Starbard. I am currently a fire captain, former local president. I've chaired the Health Advisory Committee and the Public Employee Committee for the town of Falmouth. To be clear, this bill is an advocate for all joint purchasing groups in the Commonwealth, but today I speak specifically to the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group. The Cape Cod Municipal Health Group is a joint purchasing health agency that provides health, dental, and vision insurance for about 20,000 employees and retirees, representing 53 governmental units. It is the largest joint purchasing group, strictly joint purchasing group of municipal nature in the Commonwealth. Currently, as constituted, employees have no voice on the board of directors or the steering committee. Many of our contributing employees and retirees pay 50% of premiums. When you add in co-pays and you add in deductibles, our members are in fact paying more in way of contribution than the employer is paying. In closing, I'd like to thank Representative Fernandez and Senator Sear for sponsoring this bill, and thank you very much. I'll close.
Thank you. Who's next on your panel? Anyone else? So we've got Rich McKinnon, Lee Cabral. Are you here?
Yeah, I think Paul is muted.
Scott, see you here.
Sorry about that. No, it's only Craig, Scott, and I. I don't know if Craig wants to add anything.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Chairman Gordon and Chairman Brady and the committee. Yeah, I mean, Scott summed it up, so I won't be long, but I just wanted to say they just need a seat at the table. This has been filed for many years, and hopefully your committee will report it out favorably, and I thank you for your time today, and you're doing a great job with the busyness. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Any questions from the committee?
I'd just like to thank the members who just spoken to keep it brief because we do have a lot of testimony and a lot of bills coming before us today. So thank you for your brief testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bridget Quinn, you testified earlier, but you actually only testified for less than a minute and said you'd be back. So, Bridget Quinn, are you back? Are you over here? Okay, I will call you again. I don't see you on the list. I see now that I'm looking over here, Representative Connolly, did you want to testify about the bill that you filed or any other bill?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you all hear me?
We can.
Terrific. And my apologies. Thank you for taking me out of turn. I had several different meetings going on all at once this morning. Wanted to join you to speak in support of the bill I filed, House Bill 2597, an act relevant to the divestment of state pension funds from nuclear weapons. And I see we're joined by several of the advocates for mass peace action, and I'm proud to work with them and with Senator Eldridge on the Senate companion for this bill. And just very briefly, because I know we have a lot going on today, but want to reiterate some of the points that I know my constituent John King made. Really that here in Massachusetts, we have a wonderful tradition of employing this strategy of divestment, whether it was when Governor Dukakis led the effort to divest from tobacco, or when Rep. Mel King led efforts to divest from the apartheid regime of South Africa, and more recent examples. And, you know, I think when it comes to nuclear weapons, it is undeniably an existential threat to human existence. The United States maintains 14 Ohio-class submarines capable of firing multiple missiles. Just one of these submarines could obliterate major cities on any nation on Earth. And, you know, if you talk to some very smart people who think about this, they tell you that this situation can't continue indefinitely. You know, sooner or later, even if it isn't a hostile action, there will be an accident, and we will all suffer and pay the price. So in conclusion, you know, I would just encourage us to really look at this issue seriously and really see that it fits within other historic examples of when we have divested for the good of all. And appreciate, once again, Mr. Chair, you giving me the opportunity to speak out of turn and support this legislation.
Thank you very much, Representative.
Thank you.
Any questions from the committee or Chair Brady? Okay, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next on the list, I have Andrew LaCourse to testify about H2660. Are you here, Andrew LaCourse? I don't see you on the right on the list of participants. So next on the list to testify is Jim Redmond of NAGE 2710. I don't see Jim Redmond either. Okay. Bridget Quinn, I called your name. You were testifying about Bill 2641. You're here on 2710 as well. We'll take written testimony, though. I know this has gone long, and it may be that you are unable to stay, but certainly anyone and everyone is welcome to provide written testimony. The next witness on our list is on S1659. That is Donna Brown Rigo. Donna Brown Rigo, are you here? Okay. Actually, I have Bridget Quinn again on S1695. Okay. Next on my list, let's see. Next on my list is Stephen Habbe, Habbe.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. And you are testifying on S1718.
Great. Thank you, Chairman Gorman, Chairman Brady, and members of the committee. My name is Stephen Hobby. I'm the Director of State Government Affairs for the American Diabetes Association and wanted to convey our support for Senate 1718. This bill would require coverage for the National Diabetes Prevention Program for public employees insured through the GIC. As I'm sure you all have a sense of it, our country has experienced a diabetes epidemic. This is something that Massachusetts is in no way immune from, with more than 1 out of 11 adults having diagnosed diabetes, or more than 500,000 people. This trend is concerning because with diabetes comes a risk for disabling complications or death, complications including heart attack, stroke, blindness, lower limb amputation, and kidney disease. In addition to these health impacts, diabetes is also very expensive for the person with diabetes in our health system generally. Most people have type 2 diabetes, and they've had pre-diabetes before developing type 2 diabetes. The good news is that there is this program, the National Diabetes Prevention Program, that can be effective for people with pre-diabetes to prevent them from developing type 2. This is an educational lifestyle change program focusing on eating, physical activity, and strategies for success in maintaining weight loss. The program has been reviewed through NIH-funded research. It has proven to be effective to lowering the risk for people developing to type 2 diabetes by 58%. Here in Massachusetts, the Institute for Clinical and Economic Review studied the program and recommended that payers provide coverage for the program. The bad news for public employees in Massachusetts, the Group Insurance Commission does not require coverage across health insurance plans for state employees. Yet many other states here in New England are moving forward. Rhode Island public employees, Maine, New Hampshire, everyone in Vermont has access to it. So Massachusetts is behind other New England states when it comes to this coverage for preventing type 2 diabetes. This is an important program. Medicare covers it. I would urge your support for Senate 1718 so public employees have this coverage so they can prevent type 2 diabetes. It's a critical issue, and I hope you'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is an important issue. Thank you for testifying about it. Chair Brady, any questions? Or members of the committee, any questions? Thank you very much for your testimony. Peter Metz, I see you. Can you unmute? I know you're having trouble unmuting.
I can.
There you go.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for getting to me. I tried to be on in the proper order, but I couldn't make it work at first. I'm Peter Metz. I'm a resident of Needham, Massachusetts, formerly of Newton, Massachusetts. I'm part of Mass Peace Action. I'm also part of the Union of Concerned Scientists and Our Lady's Justice and Peace Committee in Newton. I'm here to testify on the nuclear weapons divestment bills. And although I certainly support the divestment in Yemen War for arms, the case for nuclear weapons is, I think, fairly straightforward. Okay, nuclear weapons are the most horrific, inhumane, indecent weapons that we've ever had, and they constitute humanity should not be using them. So anything we can do to get rid of them is appropriate, and Massachusetts can add its little bit to that by not encouraging the industry that manufactures them. We've done that in the past, and we've contributed very nicely in the tobacco movement and the apartheid movement by divestment, and we can do it here for such a moral issue. So I call on the committee to approve these two measures and send them forward and make Massachusetts a part of the winning team. I'm deeply involved right now in an effort to get Presidents Biden and Putin to agree at their summit in a week to begin the work to eliminate nuclear weapons from the planet. And this kind of thing just encourages that, and we need to be doing that. Thank you very much.
Good luck with that work.
Thank you.
Questions from the committee or from Senator Brady? Chair Brady? Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony. The next witness, and I see you're here, Carly Rose, is here to testify with Senator John Keenan, and you set up through the senator a time to come at, which is in 5 minutes. So I'm going to read through the bill. We have no more witnesses. Well, we have a few witnesses that we called who didn't answer. I'm just going to read through that list so that we give Senator Keenan a chance to arrive. And as soon as he's here, we'll get to that testimony. So through my list, the folks that signed up that are not here or have not answered are Francis Jeffries on 2597 and on 2636. Ira Helfand on 2636. Lenore Elanese. Are any of those folks here? Okay, and I know Bridget Quinn testified earlier, but she'll submit written testimony, I believe she said, on a few bills. Andrew LaCourse, have you arrived? Okay. Jim Redmond of NAGE. I know you'll submit written testimony because you're not here. Okay. I know we have other things going on even in the virtual building. Donna Brown Rigo is on S1659. Okay. And so what we will do in the few minutes we have until, and Ms. Rose, do you, yeah, we're going to wait a little bit longer for the senator, right? Okay. All right. Let's see. So I'm going to close out the written portion of the, I'm sorry, I'm going to close out the live testimony portion of the bills that we've heard. I'll just read through the list and I won't close out, obviously, the one, Ms. Rose, that you're going to testify about. So we've heard testimony on H43. So the live version of H43 is now closed. I will stop by saying that there is written testimony that you've already received. Several pieces of written testimony has been received, and a list of that testimony is available. H44 is now closed to live testimony. H53 now closed to live testimony. H2565 now closed to live testimony. H2573 is closed to live testimony. H25, it's written twice. H2583 closed to live testimony. H2587 closed to live testimony. H2640 is closed to live testimony. And right now I see Senator Keenan is here. So rather than closing, I'll open and introduce Senator Keenan. Welcome to testify, and you are here with Carly Rose. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon. How are you?
We're great, thank you.
I'm just something's not happening right on my end. If you could just bear with me for a second. I'm sorry about this.
Okay.
Everything seems to be spinning. But I thank you for the opportunity to come before the committee. I'm here to testify on a bill 1737, which is a bill that affects the membership, the makeup of the membership on the PRIM board, the board that is responsible for overseeing the investment of the nearly $90 billion as of April that was in the fund. $22 billion of that $90 billion comes from local and regional retirement systems. And presently on the board, they do not have adequate representation. What this bill would do, and it's a companion bill to House 2609 and House 2751 that have been filed by Representative Cusack and Representative Peisch. This bill would make one of the seats on the board representative of those local and regional retirement systems. They have not had a seat on this board since 1987. So you have thousands of members of local and regional retirement systems that have nearly $22 billion, 22 out of $90 billion in the PRIT fund is theirs, and they do not have any direct say on how that money will be invested. So this bill gives them the say while preserving both the gubernatorial appointment control and the board side. It would require MACRIS to present the Mass Association of Contributory Retirement Systems to nominate 3 potential appointees with experience in public safety union as a member retirement board, present those 3 names to the governor, have the governor appoint one of the 3 to the Prim board seat. And again, this would allow members of municipal, regional, and county contributory retirement systems to have some say in the management of their retirement contributions. This is not without precedent. There has been membership in the past on the board of local board members, but that is no longer the case. So what we're asking with this is that it receive a favorable report, that local, county, and regional retirement systems get the representation they need. And I welcome any questions you may have. And I want to thank you. Last session, this bill was reported out favorably, and we're hopeful that it will be reported out favorably again this session. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And just to, if I can just add one more thing, I come to this having been the executive director of the Norfolk County Retirement System, a system that had at the time about $550 million in assets. I did that for about 9 years. And so I'm aware that some of the smaller systems that have invested with PRIT and some of the regional systems that have invested with PRIT, some of them have had to invest with PRIT because of their performance at the local level. They really do want to have some say in how that money is managed. Even the Norfolk County Retirement System, at the time that I was the executive director, did have funds within PRIT because PRIT had access to some types of funds that local systems, regional and county retirement systems could not invest in under existing rules at the time. So it gives them additional exposure. So it's only fair that if the funds are there, that they have somebody who will represent their interest. And then that's not to say that the board overall doesn't, but somebody with a more direct connection to those local retirement systems. So I thank you for your kind consideration and hope you are all well.
Thank you very much. What we'll do, if it's okay with the committee, is I'd like to hear from Ms. Rose, and then if we have questions, we can ask either one of you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairs Brady, Gordon, and members of the committee. My name is Trooper Carly Rose, and on behalf of the leadership and members of the State Police Association of Massachusetts, I wish to be recorded in opposition to Bills H2609, H2751, and S1737. I bring to my seat as the Governor's Public Safety appointee to the Massachusetts Prim Board a deep understanding of retirement-related financial and contractual matters. Working for the Massachusetts Teachers Retirement Board prior to joining the Massachusetts State Police in 2005, my role included advising public school teachers and administrators and conducting public seminars on retirement-related matters for teachers. I am confident that this experience, in addition to my over 16 years as a state trooper, has served the PRIT funds beneficiaries well. Someone once said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That is the case here because over the past decade, the Prim asset value has soared from $50.2 billion to a record $90.1 billion. The existing structure ensuring a balanced and independent 9-person board has been in place for decades and is clearly working very well. No individual organization represented on the Prim board has a majority voice. If passed, these bills would disrupt that balance by giving one entity, MACRS, a disproportionate amount of influence over matters of consequence to every Massachusetts employee, past, present, or future. There are other reasons for this committee to view these bills unfavorably as well. They include MACRS members are very well represented by 4 beneficiary members on the 9-person Prim board, 2 of which are state teachers beneficiaries and 2 are state employee beneficiaries. Removing the governor's independent appointment of a public safety representative and essentially giving appointing authority to MACRS would upset the balance of the board. By giving this appointment to MACRS would be at the expense of a state police employee union member who is required to use the state pension system. MACRA's interests are not entirely invested in the continuing success of Prim. Their advocates forcefully seek to protect and preserve the autonomy of local and municipal retirement boards rather than requiring them to invest in PRIM. MACRAS has 0 state police union members that contribute to PRIM. In closing, it is perplexing that an organization that may appoint a member of a retirement system who does not contribute to PRIM would want to take a seat from an organization whose entire membership contributes to and whose entire membership is dependent on the success of PRIM. Further, it is very troubling that an organization not required to contribute to PRIM seeks to influence decisions of the PRIM board by disenfranchising those I represent and those required to invest with PRIM. For these reasons, I ask you to oppose and report unfavorably H2609, H2751, and S1737. Thank you for your time.
Okay. All right, we'll take a look at those bills. Does anyone have any questions from the committee? All right, hearing none, I appreciate your testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, I will go back to make, Chair Brady, did you have? Okay, I'm going to go back to just closing out the other, the bills that we have before us. I'm going to just start back. I think this is where I ended at, and I'll just read the list, 2640. So these bills will all be closed now to live testimony, 2640, 2604, 2607, 2609, 2615, 2622, 2635, 2636, S1735, H2638, H2641, H2660, H2689, H2708, H2710, H2719, H2742, H2751, H2773, H2791, H3730, S1659, S1674, S1676, S1685, S1695, S1703, S1713, S1718, S1735, S1735, S1759, S1760, S1766, and S1780. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your patience, and thank you for your testimony. Thank you.